So, who's really the bad guy in Pokémon Horizons? Before this episode, it was Gibeon for sure, right? But after this episode, we now have to wonder, is he really the villain? Maybe Lucius is not the hero he appears to be. Or maybe they are both equally guilty of, equally to blame for, to different degrees, what happened. Maybe there is no right or wrong here. It's all a matter of perspective and who you side with or who or what you choose to believe. One thing is certain though, Spinel is pure evil and he probably is the actual bad guy in this series. We knew this to an extent of course, but this episode truly elevated his villainy to new heights. And Chelsea, who has been collaborating with him for a while now, might not be too far behind him. That is, unless he intends to betray her too. In which case, then she will just be another victim of his schemes. Something that would make him even worse. Amethio was right to distrust him, while I was wrong for believing that Spinel was loyal to Gibeon at least. I figured that he outed Amethio so that he could replace him, so that he could be the one that fulfills Gibeon's wish. However, it's clear now that Spinel took Amethio out of the equation because he posed a threat to his master plan of using Gibeon to reach Laqua, seeking to attain Laquaum for himself and for his own gains. This is of course because Amethio has been aware that Spinel cannot be trusted for a while. Unfortunately for him though, Amethio is not the only one that suspected him. Hamber has also been questioning Spinel's loyalty, which is ultimately why he decided to side with Amethio, stepping in to rescue him, Onya, and Cirque after they were confined to a warehouse by the guards at Exceed at the behest of Spinel, following the execution of their plan to hack into the company's database seeking answers regarding Spinel and his plan, which allowed them to learn that what he used on his Umbreon back in episode 64 was merely a prototype, suggesting that the final product will have a more powerful effect. After rescuing Amethio and the company, Hamber takes them to Amethio's family estate, which is where the bulk of this episode takes place and where we learn the most new information. So I was right about the identity of this building, though of course this was an easy guess. The first thing we see here is this portrait of a woman who, as I also predicted, is Amethio's mother. Another easy guess, right? Unfortunately, he reveals that much like I suspected, she is long gone, which wasn't as easy of a prediction. It turns out she perished in a car accident back when Amethio was still quite young, so much so that he barely remembers her. Her absence and that of Amethio's father, Cervantes, who was likely too busy managing the Exceed company, meant that Amethio had to be raised by Hamber, which explains why they've always felt like more than just master and butler, like they had a strong bond akin to that of family. It also explains why Hamber was always looking out for Amethio, helping him train, giving him a Terra Orb, siding with him whenever possible, etc. Now, I also predicted that Amethio's mother was likely also Gibeon's daughter, given their striking resemblance to one another. However, I struggled to figure out how she could be his daughter and also the wife of Cervantes, who was referred to as Gibeon's son. But as many of you pointed out, it turns out that he is his son-in-law, which makes perfect sense, especially since unlike his wife, he looks nothing like Gibeon. So, it is soon after arriving at the estate that Hamber spills the beans regarding Gibeon. According to him, and by extension Gibeon, who of course is the one who shared his backstory with Hamber, Gibeon considered Lucius a dear friend, his best friend in fact, and he believed that they had the same goal to use Laquaum for the benefit of humanity and Pokemon. However, it turns out that Lucius had another idea, which is why he betrayed Gibeon, to the point that he even had his Rayquaza convince Gibeon's Zygarde to betray him too. Hence why Zygarde inexplicably decided to use its cells to help seal the cluster of Laquaum against the wishes of its master. The fallout of this was of course that Gibeon almost died. However, Laquaum, which he got a sample of, saved his life. Upon making it back to civilization, he founded the Exceed Company with the intent of researching Laquaum, while also making use of the group he created with Lucius and Risto, the explorers, to aim to return to Laqua once again. So from Gibeon's perspective, he is the great savior of humanity and Pokemon who just wants what's best for them, and Lucius is a liar and a backstabber who betrayed him, foiling his plans, turning his partner against him, and ultimately leaving him to perish. However, based on what we saw in episode 75, I find his version of events questionable. I mean, I don't think this is the face of someone who wants what's best for humanity and Pokemon. This looks like someone obsessed with power, someone with delusions of grandeur, hungry, desperate for the chance to stand at the top, looking down on everyone else. Basically, he looks like a classic villain. Now, to give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he did have good intentions. Maybe he really wanted to help Pokemon and humanity. Maybe, but the way he went about it was not right, to say the least. In any case, you cannot really excuse the fact that his actions almost led to the apocalypse just because he meant well. This reminds me of something Dr. Alan Grant said in Jurassic Park 3.
Some of the worst things imaginable have been done with the best intentions.
Now, him claiming that Rayquaza turned the Zygarde against him is something I find very interesting. Why? Well, because like I mentioned in my review of episode 75, I did wonder why Gibeon forgave Zygarde for betraying him. I get that they are partners, but a betrayal like this is not something you just sweep under the rug. Well, his belief that Zygarde was convinced, or rather coerced, into double-crossing him, potentially with lies or other such nefarious tactics, could ultimately be why he let this go. Perhaps he figures that Zygarde was a victim too, just like him, someone misled by those it considered friends. I could see this being the case. This would explain such a curious turn of events. Speaking of Zygarde, Hamber reveals that he has one of its cells, though it's unclear where he got it from, considering that, again, Zygarde used them 100 years ago when it attempted to contain the cluster of Laquaum. I guess it didn't use all of them, meaning it kept at least a few, one of which ended up with Hamber, because according to him, it took a liking to him. Amethio, however, believes that this is a sign of Gibeon's trust in Hamber, but the cynical side of me has a difficult time believing this. I initially believed that this is just a way to monitor or keep tabs on Hamber, meaning that this is the complete opposite of trusting him. I could honestly see this being the case, given that Gibeon strongly believes that Lucius betrayed him. This almost certainly left him with trust issues. Though according to Hamber, when he was lost as an adventurer, Gibeon is the one who reached out to him and gave him purpose. So maybe he didn't end up being completely dismissive and distrusting of other people. It's worth mentioning that, presumably to prove what Gibeon did for him, Hamber shows off what appears to be a Reaper Cloth, the item Dusclops needs to evolve into Dusknoir, who fittingly shows up in this very moment. Hamber is definitely extremely loyal to Gibeon. Naturally, this was already obvious, but him keeping something he has no further need for serves as even more evidence of this. Amethio is loyal to Gibeon as well, of course, which is why they are here now talking about all of this, which ultimately leads Amethio, who was already in a sort of limbo, unsure of what to do going forward, and even unsure of who he is, to decide to be himself and to do what he thinks is right, what he wants to do, which is to stand against his grandfather. Not out of hate or because he is truly at odds with him. Quite the contrary, in fact. Like Hamber, he too wants what's best for Gibeon. It just so happens that what's best for his grandfather right now is to oppose him. Specifically to oppose his plan, which Spinel is planning to use against Gibeon, betraying him in the process. So Amethio wants to protect his grandfather from Spinel, a cause everyone here rallies behind. Now, before moving on, I want to point out 3 things. First, on top of everything else he revealed, Hamber also reveals that one of the responsibilities Gibeon entrusted him with was to train the Explorer admins, which he did. He trained all of them except one, Spinel. This might explain at least a few of his unsavory characteristics. Turns out that unlike the others, he was a researcher at Exceed, which explains why he is so inquisitive and tech-savvy. He was personally recruited into the Explorers by Gibeon himself because he showed a lot of promise. Which sounds to me like the classic, he approached the head honcho pretending to be loyal and devoted with good intentions on the outside and a nefarious hidden agenda on the inside. This background as a personal trainer also explains why Amethio sought Hamber out when he decided to get stronger. Second, several pictures are displayed in this room, which provide a glimpse into Amethio's childhood. 2 of them feature him with Cerulege back when it was still a Char Cadet. This is used to highlight why they have such a strong bond. It's because they've been together for many years. We can also better appreciate here just how beautiful his mother was. Moreover, we can see that Cervantes has had his Cinchino ever since it was a Minchino. Third, Hamber reveals to Amethio that Laqua is a descendant of Lucius and Risto. However, he is completely unfazed by this revelation because, like most of us, he had a feeling this was the case. Goes to show just how smart and observant he is. So, moving on, the Rising Bow Tacklers are not given much to do in this episode, which is understandable given who and what the focus of the episode is, but they do have 2 key scenes. One where they ponder the state of Laqua, the purpose of Laquium, and the aim of the Explorers. Courtesy of Molly, they do arrive at an interesting conclusion regarding Laquium. Its effects might center around cell activation, meaning that it accelerates the creation of new cells, sending normal organisms into overdrive, hence why back in episode 75 we saw trees and the land itself crumbling due to growing way too fast, and sustaining declining organisms by rapidly replacing dead cells. Hence why Gibeon not only survived, but is still alive today. See, I knew Laquium is to blame for his longer than average lifespan. I just didn't know the specifics of why. On the subject of Gibeon, he is shown in his usual quarters, basking in the fact that his body is holding up well, with Spinel commenting that for the Explorers to prosper evermore, Gibeon must live for eternity. Gibeon meanwhile looks forward to the Laquium he will soon obtain, since the seal on Laqua will be lifted soon, suggesting that said seal has a clear expiration date that he is aware of, or maybe he is just banking on Laqua and company taking care of it. Also, this exterior shot suggests that Gibeon has been near Laqua all along. He just couldn't reach it due to the seal, hence why he was seeking Terapagos. This also explains why he always attended meetings remotely. So it was never a matter of finding Laqua, it was a matter of getting access to it. Perhaps being this close to the source of Laqueum is part of the reason why Gibeon has been able to stick around for such a long time. Though if he has been here all along, then how did he create the Exceed Company and expand the Explorers? I guess maybe he went back to civilization like I said earlier and he accomplished all of this and then he came back here to keep his ambitions close at hand, or maybe because he realized this was the only way to stay alive. As always, for every answer we get, several more questions arise. But yeah, I think that the explanation of the effects of Laqueum is very cool because it's realistic. It's awesome that while it can achieve things outside the realm of possibility, the reasoning is still grounded in reality, in facts, which is fitting for a naturally occurring element found in a place known as a paradise. Also, the fact that it relates to cells makes me think of Zygarde, whose cells are actually shown on the cluster of Laqueum in Laqua, likely awaiting the return of their master. I wonder if this connection to cells might explain why Zygarde chose to throw its cells at the Laqueum. Maybe it sensed something familiar, something that could benefit it. So it wasn't trying to stop the Laqueum, it was trying to make its cells stronger, which will in turn make it stronger when it returns to its 50% form. Therefore, it likely didn't betray Gibeon, certainly not because someone told it to. It was, much like him, simply succumbing to greed and a thirst for power. Assuming Gibeon realized this, it makes sense that he forgave it for its betrayal. Also, since we now know that the explorers have been close to Laqua all along, Hamber having a Zygarde cell is not such an anomaly. But anyways, the second key thing that features the Rising Bolt Tacklers, which is also how the episode ends, is them reaching Laqua thanks to Rayquaza. Though as Fried soon points out, they haven't actually found Laqua yet. They are only in the vicinity of it, and thus they will have to head into a nearby town called Kumuri in order to figure out the exact location of Laqua. So yeah, overall this episode was great. While it was lacking in terms of action and the thrills, it more than made up for it with just how much we got to learn about Gibeon, Amethio, Zygarde, the Explorers, Laqua, and Laqueum. The impact of these revelations on the story going forward cannot be understated, since not only are they to blame for Amethio switching sides, which will undoubtedly turn the tide of the upcoming epic showdown, but they also make us question what we thought we knew about this series. Who's the true villain? What really happened 100 years ago? And what will happen when the Explorers and the Rising Bolt Tacklers finally clash in Laqua a few episodes from now? Specifically, one has to wonder how Lucius and Gibeon's reunion will unfold, considering that they have very different interpretations of what took place on that fateful day in Laqua. Moreover, Amethio's quote-unquote betrayal is bound to lead to a very personal and emotional confrontation with his grandfather. This episode made it clear that what awaits us is no mere final battle, but a collision of ideals, of truths long buried, and of fates intertwined instead. Building up to such a fascinating and grandiose confrontation is exactly what makes this episode so valuable and important, and why it's ultimately so great despite its lack of excitement and action. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, feel free to click the links on screen. And if you'd like to support the channel and help me keep making content like this, you can find ways to do so in the description below. Your support truly means the world to me. Thank you so much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.